Good morning. I will call to order this special meeting of the Executive Committee for August 1st, 2017. I'm Betsy Hodges, Mayor and Chair of the committee, joined this morning by committee members Councilmember Cam Gordon, Council Vice President Glidden, Council President Johnson, and Councilmember Reich. We are a full complement of the committee and can conduct the city's business. We have one item on the agenda today, which is appointment of the Chief of Police. And I today am very proud and very honored to put forward the name of Medaria Arredondo to be the next police chief in the city of Minneapolis for a term ending January 7th, 2019, to finish out the unexpired term of Chief Harteau, and to refer the appointment to the City Council for the setting of a public hearing. And first, I will make that motion. There's a letter that accompanies it. I will say a few words about why. I will open up the floor, and then we will take a vote. I have had the opportunity to work with Acting Chief Arredondo for many years now as council member and as mayor, and certainly saw the measure of his leadership in the last few weeks as we have dealt with such a tragic incident in Minneapolis. With the death of Justine Damond. And I have always admired his work, his demeanor, his ability to communicate, to build relationships across many lines. What I find is, and this is in part because he is of and from Minneapolis, Chief Rondo is. He has been in the police department for 28 years in a variety of roles. But he's a Minneapolis kid, born and bred. He went to Minneapolis public schools. He's a graduate of Roosevelt High School, Minneapolis neighborhoods, and has spent his career at the MPD. And what I find is, as I go around the city, especially in recent days, everywhere I go, there's somebody who has a story about Acting Chief Arredondo, about how he has assisted them, or how they knew him as a kid, or there's a family member eager and proud of him and his work. He knows our city inside and out. He knows our department inside and out. And he couples that with a vision for the future of the department that is forward-thinking, that is grounded in community, that is grounded in our officers and their well-being, and moving forward so that we can have the best public safety possible and the best relationship and best relationship with community and community trust possible. He is a skilled communicator. He is respected far and wide, inside and outside of the department. He has built relationships. If you note the people who have come out publicly to support him publicly, in media, on social media, you will find all kinds of people from all over, some of them quite unexpected, who support Acting Chief Arredondo. And that kind of trust, that kind of support comes from doing the work, doing it well, honest, genuine engagement in community at a time when trust and building trust between the police department and the community is more important than it's ever been. And it's always been incredibly important, but our awareness of its importance and the work we've been doing to create that trust is ongoing and more important than it has ever been. And as a result, I cannot think of a better choice for chief of the Minneapolis Police Department than Medaria Arredondo, and I am proud to forward his name today to be the chief of police of the Minneapolis Police Department. So that motion is on the floor. Any discussion? Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm supportive of this appointment. I've just also wanted to clarify that this appointment will be to finish the current term. So as it says in our agenda, this to term ending January 7, 2019. I know that people have talked a lot about the timing, and every time we come up with a new police chief appointment, it's what kind of search do we do? How do we do that search? I think people are very sensitive. This is an election year. There's liable to be changes on the council and in the city next year. I actually believe that we will be doing something of great value to the next council to be appointing a chief to finish out the term rather than drag this out longer. Also for the residents of Minneapolis, I think having some stability will make a lot of sense. For those people who are wondering about should we be looking elsewhere and thinking about it more, this will certainly give the future council and mayor, and I suspect some or almost all of us might be here as well, but I know you won't be coming back, Councilmember Glidden, but that will give them a chance to review and look at things again. So I think this makes a lot of sense. I'm very supportive. I've certainly admired the work of Assistant Chief Arredondo and worked with him many times. One of the things most recently that I think was most striking is when I was looking hard for somebody to help figure out how we could do a mental health co-responder model in the city of Minneapolis. And he played a key role in that, open-minded, looked at the research, looked at other cities, attended meetings, talked to me, talked to advocates, and I think we were able to craft a really positive pilot program that we'll be working with, and which is an innovative new way, I think, of doing policing in the city. And so I look forward to lots more open-mindedness, lots more using research-based approaches to see how we can improve policing in our city.
I should also note that we are joined in the audience this morning by Council Members Palmisano and Goodman. Welcome. Council Vice President Glidden.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I wanted to speak in support of the motion and talk a little bit about why, and then also kind of put out there some things that I'm hoping to maybe hear that I think I have heard from Acting Chief Arredondo, but also that I just wanted to kind of put out there as some things I'd even like to hear a little bit more about. I have known Rondo, I think even since maybe the first year that I joined the city council. I know it was very early in my term, and I have heard a lot about him from community, because at one point he lived in a part of the community that I represent, and a lot of community members feel a strong connection to Acting Chief Arredondo. I just have always been impressed by his character, by his openness, and by his just approach to the work of public safety, but centering that within community. You know, I appreciate that Councilmember Gordon talked about kind of, I think, what's a little bit more of a process challenge beyond just, is there a great candidate in front of us? And I think it's important to kind of just call that out here, which is that we have a partial term left of about 17 months. We are in an election year. And essentially what that means is if we did think that doing a search was the right thing to do, potentially that means a significant amount of time to go through that process. Amount of time, just noting again, it's an election year, that might be as much as maybe a year to really do that. And I think that is time that I'm very concerned about losing, especially knowing that there is somebody like Acting Chief Arredondo who is here, who is embedded in the community, and who is ready to do the work. You can lose a lot of cost in time, in momentum. Couple things I wanted to say that I've heard you say that, including last night at your press conference, that I really appreciated. One was you talked about that some years ago a chief might be able to put together a 5-year business plan, but that is not the environment that we are in today. That potentially a 1-year business plan is maybe the most that you could do. To me, that just said to me that you have a strong understanding of the moment of change that we are in, that this is a profession that has a lot of national attention, not just attention from community in Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota, and that as a chief, you would need to be in tune to that and have yourself surrounded by folks that could help you with that. So I do think this is a moment where a lot of change is happening. I think back even to the last 2-3 years, a lot of change has happened in the Minneapolis Police Department. And I think your ability to surround yourself with a team that has enough depth, that shares your values, to be able to think about all of these policy issues, help create a strategic approach, and be able to have that connection with community is really important. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that I have always felt like you have an approach where you feel like the police department is really part of the city enterprise. And I think sometimes we have a tendency to, in some ways, isolate the police department. And the police department is a very unique department, but I think we need to start thinking more about how does the police department fit into the city as a city enterprise, and how does the enterprise as a whole support the police department. And I really feel like you bring that perspective of wanting to have an enterprise-wide and community-wide approach. And this is a time, again, a time of change where I feel like the police department needs the enterprise there to support it, and vice versa. So I think that is something that I just encourage you to maybe think a little bit more about how that works. I will say too that just I know that you are someone who is not afraid, even when the consequences might be great to you, to stand up for change, because that is your value. And honestly, I just think that that is a huge, huge thing. I know that you have stood up for change within the Minneapolis Police Department, even when the cost to you and yourself personally might have been very great. And I think that that is a characteristic I hope that others recognize is very significant about you and what you bring, as well as a love of the department and a love of the city that is driving your work. So I'm supporting this. I look forward to hearing more from community as part of the public hearing. I have heard a lot of supportive comments from community members that I'm in touch with about you and excitement. I think just to mention maybe a last challenge I want to put on the table, it's maybe a challenge to us, which is this is a very difficult time. And so how would you be supported to do your very best job for the city of Minneapolis? And I think we need to think carefully about that. A chief alone doesn't create a whole change for policing practices. I mean, it's a combination of things. This is the other thing I just wanted to say. It's public attention, sustained public attention. It is political engagement and political will, and it is having a chief that is there to engage with all those stakeholders and also be there for the department. So I think it's up to all of us to be able to support you or to support anyone who would be in that leadership position. But I do think that you are the right person at the right time, and I appreciate the appointment.
Council President Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to support this motion today and just express my appreciation for Interim Chief Ferradondo to be willing to take this job on. And I'll echo my colleagues' comments. This is an extremely challenging time for public safety professionals, for the community, and I, again, appreciate your willingness, because I think it does come from a love of the city and a love of the people here and a love of the police department. So I wish you all the deep help that we can give you. It is, again, a really challenging time. You know, the one thing I would say too about this interim appointment, the voters of the city of Minneapolis decided many, many years ago, I can't remember what year it was, on charter change, to change the term of the police department so it wasn't concurrent with the mayor's term. And that is something that's played itself out, you know, several times actually since I've been on the city council. And I appreciate the mayor doing what she's doing today by using her powers to fill this term of the unexpired term of Chief Harteau. I think it makes all the sense in the world, and I'm just delighted that we have someone of the caliber of Chief Arredondo to be able to step into this role, because I have every confidence in you. I've thought back to, I think, first meeting you when you worked for Chief Olson, and I've seen you take some of the hardest jobs, the hardest communication with people, communications with citizens, and so I appreciate the depth of your experience. I was surprised when I read an article in one of the magazines about how long you had been on the Minneapolis Police Department, because you don't look that old. So anyway, but it occurred to me, this was perhaps 2 years ago. This is perhaps 2 years ago, and I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't realize Rondo had been a Minneapolis police officer that long. So I appreciate your experience, your service, and wish you all the luck in the world, and know that we will be as helpful as we possibly can in this very difficult job for you. Thank you.
Councilmember Reich.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just touching on the comments already made, I believe we have a moment that doesn't allow for too much luxury in terms of how the process gets handled. We have a compressed time frame. That's a practical thing. But more importantly, and as it's been touched on, we have to move forward, and we have to move forward diligently. And this isn't just about an execution of a department in terms of its managerial mechanics. We've got to drive down this change, this effort, this urgent enterprise of community building with our department at the very ground level, with the citizens, with the block leaders, with the sergeants, with the supervisors, with the very precincts that break up our communities into manageable systems of what should be a partnership of community and policing. The two words go together. And I think we can't waste a day in terms of getting to that work. So for me, my comments are about looking forward. That's why I support this motion that you forwarded, Mayor.
Thank you. So the motion before us, and I will just read it in its entirety, is appointment of Chief of Police Department, considering Mayor Hodges' nomination of Madaria Arredondo to the appointed position of Police Chief for a term ending January 7th, 2019. And 2, referring the appointment to the City Council for the setting of a public hearing. And for folks in the room who want to know, what that means is on Friday at the City Council meeting, the City Council will set the public hearing. That public hearing, my understanding, will be on August 9th in the Public Safety Committee. And that will be the opportunity for folks to weigh in and have things to say about the nomination of Acting Chief Arredondo to Chief of Police. And from there, it will be forwarded to the City Council for final vote in the council meeting after that. That will be the process moving forward. So I don't see any other discussion. I will just say again, one thing I neglected to say at the beginning, which is a thank you to Acting Chief Arredondo, both for your 28 years of service and your willingness to serve in this role. I appreciate it very much. Seeing no further discussion, all in approval, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That carries. We will move on to the next part of the process. Thank you very much. Seeing no further business before the committee, we are adjourned.